Make peace with yourself. The war outside exists because the war inside exists. Now that we're all a little bit more connected with the physical body and less in the mind, we will start with the actual practice of Tong Leng, which is a compassion practice. So the principle of this work is that we all have some form of suffering that we're going through in life, whether we like to see it or not. There is suffering present. Whether we're conscious of it or not is a different question. But now and then we go through phases where we may have doubts about something. We may have difficult decisions to make. We may have to deal with other people's suffering. We may have some pain, some illness, disease. We may have to deal with a loss on some level, whether it's financial, a friend, whether we've lost a job or a person that you really love. Maybe whether it is because they just had to leave your actual physical space, going into a different environment, or it could be that they had to leave this life. So all of this is forms of suffering. Also old age, because we're not as vital as we used to be. We may seem less, should I say, useful to others. We may feel like we've lost our purpose in life. All of these aspects of life is partly suffering. So we're all suffering on some level. And if you're not personally suffering, somebody else around you may be suffering. So with this practice, the principle is recognition. So once something is recognized, it can be resolved. So once you have a, should I say, an image of something that's happening outside of you, and there's a mirror image inside, or there's something happening inside and there's a mirror image outside, what this does is this starts resonating. So it starts creating harmony in the body and the mind. So in this process, if for instance you feel a lot of tension around the heart area or a specific organ and you've got blockages, it means that some form of suffering has been stuck in an organ system, in the heart, in the emotions, in the energy body, wherever it is. There's something that's blocked. And a blockage is basically constriction, which means there's not a lot of space or movement in that dynamic. It's locked up. So through this practice, what we're doing is we're visualizing whatever we're dealing with, whether we recognize it or not, whether we're aware of what it is or not, it doesn't matter. We're recognizing there's something. There is suffering present. And we're visualizing the suffering outside of ourselves. And by working with the suffering outside of ourselves, it's like a mirror image that sends, should I say, a reflection back. So there's a resonance. They resound to each other. They resound, literally, if you listen to the word. The sound of the one and the other is the same, and therefore there is a resonance, which means they start vibrating at the same level. So if you can imagine the pain in your heart, the suffering that you're going through outside of yourself, and this mirror image starts resonating back with you, it creates a vibration which starts loosening up some of the blockages, some of the knots that's been created, and it starts creating a little bit more flow. And in time, the more you work with this external, internal dynamic outside of yourself and inside of yourself, the more this whole dynamic softens up. It's like what may have been rock hard in the beginning with no space, no movement, no nothing, becomes a little bit movable. And because there's movement, it means there's space. And the more you work with this dynamic, the more space you create, the more movement you create, the more flow you create, and eventually harmony is created. So that it becomes back into balance. So there's also a part of suffering which is about loneliness, if you feel that nobody understands, or you're alone in this world, or nobody understands you. So even in that, it's like you're working with yourself internally and externally through the visualization. And you know you're never alone because this dynamic exists everywhere. Whatever it is that you're suffering with, everybody is suffering with you. It may not be that specific thing that you have in mind or the specific sequence of events, but everybody is going through suffering in their own way on some level. So through this practice, we're working to soften up these blockages by creating this resounding, should I say, harmony flow with your internal and external reality of your own world.